Hey guys, hope you're doing good tonight. I'm just going to read a couple of short stories, some paranormal stories. So this one is called The Spirits of Madeline Island. Before white men came to Wisconsin, there was a land called Place of the Golden-Breasted Woodpecker. We call it Madeline. Largest of the Apostle Islands scattered off Lake Superior's shore near Bayfield. Madeline Island is a 14,000-acre refuge with white sand beaches hugging impenetrable forests of fir, spruce, pine, and hardwoods, and contrasting sharply with wind-sculpted red granite cliffs on the island's lakeside. It's an ancient place. For 3,000 years, Madeline has known human footsteps. Primitive peoples came in the forest, taking from the waters and the forest their simple diet of fish, meat, and berries when Roman armies were conquering Europe. Later, the Ojibwe, Chippewa, were forced from their ancestral home along the St. Lawrence River and settled on the Apostle Islands. Now, the St. Lawrence River, I actually live right beside it. That's so cool. Not this part, but the fact that it was St. Lawrence River. A great village was built on Madeline with population, archaeologists say, of nearly 12,000, but the area became overpopulated and a terrible famine struck the Chippewa people. Farming was rudimentary, if practiced at all. The men of the tribe could not kill enough fish and game to feed a village the size of a small modern city. In desperation, tribal elders and the medicine men resorted to cannibalism. Oh my god. Young maidens and children were chosen and offered as sacrifices on a primitive altar, their flesh used as food. But the population rebelled after time and the old leadership was executed. Tales began spreading that the island was haunted by the vengeful spirits of the dead women and the children. They would rise from the earth near a sacrificial altar and wander over the island. Legend says a great exodus took place and the entire village was evacuated to the mainland until not a Chippewa remained on the Madeline. Various families migrated to locations in northern Wisconsin and Minnesota. Some accounts insist it was several centuries before the Chippewa would again camp on the large island. Now, there are a few Indians on the island. Earlier in this century, it is said some sacrificial tobacco was found scattered at the site of the ancient altar. Today, Madeline Island caters primarily to tourists, several hundred residents. Few traces remain of the island's original inhabitants. A modern yacht, harbor, and marina occupy the lagoon near which the sacrificial altar was located. Sorry, I bit my tongue. I'm having a hard time talking. Nearby is a lavish resort and a golf course created in 1967 by the world-famous designer Robert Trent Jones. A few old islanders say the lagoon used to harbor the ghosts of those killed and devoured centuries ago, although no one has reported any recent apparitions on a cool, dark, foggy night. If you sit near the shore of that lagoon, at the edge of the old Indian burial ground, and listen intently, you might hear the haunting, plaintive cries of the sacrificed. Okay, I didn't know that was going to be a totally sad story, but it was, and R.I.P. to all those involved. That's terrible. Okay, this next one is called the Ojibwe Ghost. In ancient days, Indians roamed Wisconsin. Game was plentiful in the dense forest, and men hunting each day provided well for their families. One winter evening, a young Ojibwe wife, awaiting the return of her husband, became uneasy. He was always home early, tired but eager to sit by the fire and spin stories of the day's adventures for her and the child. But now, suddenly the silence of the night was broken by the sounds of footsteps. The wife hurried to the door of the lodge. Her husband was nowhere in sight. Instead, two strange women stood beyond the doorway, their thin figures wrapped in garments that almost concealed their long, hollow-eyed faces. The hunter's wife did not recognize them. They were not of her tribe, and she had no idea where they might have come from. The nearest family lived a distance of several days' travel through the woods. Yet, not wishing to appear inhospitable, she invited them in to warm up by the fire. They accepted her invitation, but instead of going to the fire, huddled in a dark corner of the room. Suddenly a voice cried out, "Merciful spirit, there are two corpses clothed in garments." The wife wheeled around. There was no one there, no one except the silent guests. Had she been dreaming, hearing only the sound of a rising wind? Then the door burst open, and the hunter appeared, dragging behind him the carcass of a large, fat deer. At that instant, the strangers rushed to the animal and began pulling off the choicest bits of white fat. The husband and wife, although astonished by such impropriety, decided that their guests must be famished, and so they said nothing. The next day, when the hunter returned from the chase, the same thing occurred. On the third day, the young man, deciding to cater to the whims of his peculiar visitors, tied a bundle of fat on top of the carcass he brought home. The women seized it eagerly, then ate the portion of fat that had been set aside for the wife. Hunter, although tempted to rebuke them, remained silent. For some mysterious reason, he had had an unaccountable good luck in bringing down game since the ghostly visitors had come into his home. He thought that perhaps somehow his good fortune had something to do with their presence. Besides, the women didn't cause any trouble. On the contrary, they began to be helpful. Each evening they gathered wood, stacked it by the fire, and returned all implements to the place where they had found them. During the daytime they huddled obtrusively in a corner. They never joined a family conversation, nor laughed, nor joked. Finally, one evening in the early spring, the hunter stayed out later than usual. When he did appear with a carcass, the visitors tore off the fat so rudely that the wife, who had held in her anger in check for so many months, was on the verge of lashing out at the usurpers. Although she managed to keep silent, she was certain this time that the guests sensed her resentment. After the family had gone to bed, the husband heard the women weeping. He tried to sleep, but their sobbing seemed incessant. Recalling the looks exchanged between his wife and the guests, he worried that this mate had offended them. Had she spoken sharply to them? Said something that perhaps he hadn't heard? He got up, went over to the women, and asked what was wrong. After assuring him that he had treated them kindly, they spoke further. "We come from the land of the dead to test the sincerity of the living," they began. They explained that many living people, bereaved by death in a family, say that if only the dead could be restored to life, they would devote the rest of their lives to making them happy. The Master of Life had given them 3 moons in which to test their sincerity of those who had lost friends or relatives. "We have been here more than half that time," they said, "but now your wife is so angered by our presence that we have decided we must leave." The hunter's wife, awakened now by the voices, arose and stood at her husband's side. The ghost went on to explain that they had eaten the choicest parts of the hunter's kills. That was the particular trial selected for you. We know, by your customs, that the white bat is reserved for the wife. In usurping that privilege, we have put you both to a severe test of your tempers and feelings. But that is what we are sent to do. Before the astonished hunter and his wife could respond, the ghost blessed them and said goodbye. At that moment, the lodge was plunged into total darkness. The couple heard the door open and shut. The ghosts had gone, but their blessings were made manifest into the years to come. The hunter excelled in the chase, fathered many splendid children, and enjoyed health, wealth, and a long life. Such were the rewards of befriending 2 lonely ghosts who had come to test him on a winter's night long ago. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll try and do one of these every night. Have a good night, guys. Bye.